Hey, happy Friday. This week we'll talk about xCloud getting banned from the iOS App Store. We'll talk about Mediatek chips being used in Huawei smartphones. And we'll also talk about the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 fiasco. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. Okay, my pick of the week is going to be Apple banning Microsoft's upcoming game streaming service, xCloud, from its iOS App Store about a month ahead of when it was supposed to launch, which is really odd news. So if you haven't heard of Microsoft's xCloud yet, it's basically their Netflix for gaming solution. So you basically pay $15 a month for Xbox Game Pass, which then not only lets you download their whole catalog of games for free and play it while you're subscribed, but it also lets you stream all of these games from their cloud to any device that you want to. So for example, you could play AAA games on your smartphone or on your tablet. Unless you are on iOS, of course, because Apple has basically announced that since they can't control every single game that comes to Game Pass, they can't ensure that they all meet their quality and safety guidelines, and by extension, doesn't meet their policy requirements and can't come to the App Store, which is problematic for a couple of reasons. First, it's kind of a weak argument. I mean, Apple doesn't control what videos will come to Netflix, what ebooks will come to Kindle, what products will be sold in the Amazon app, or what websites you will visit when you download a third-party browser. Those are things that people are comfortable doing. They understand that the apps are responsible for the content they show and not the App Store. So I don't understand why Game Pass would be any different. And second, Apple, together with all the other big tech companies, is currently being investigated over antitrust issues in the US. And the whole complaint everyone is bringing up against them is that they're using their monopoly over the App Store, their control that they have, to unfairly disadvantage and kind of squeeze their competitors like Spotify and like Netflix, while they give their own services like Apple TV and Apple Music a free pass. So playing tough on xCloud right now seems like a really odd choice. Ever since Apple really got into the services business, there has been this constant drumbeat of complaints that they're not playing fairly. They're not applying the same rules to their competitors as they are applying to their own services. They're charging competitors 15 to 30% for the privilege of transactions over the iPhone, while they're not doing that for themselves. And of course, they're giving their own services OS level privileges, which the third parties will never get. Like Apple already has Arcade, which is kind of a competitor to Xbox Game Pass in the sense that it is a game subscription bundle. It's a little bit of a different setup. It doesn't have game streaming components yet. But either way, at some point you gotta wonder, is Apple banning xCloud to protect the consumer or to protect Arcade? So yeah, I don't think Apple can both maintain super tight control over their store and be very strict about their rules and have very high fees, and at the same time also completely bypass those rules and fees with their own services and compete in every major category that matters. Those two things can't coexist fairly at the same time, so if Apple doesn't do something about them, I'm fairly sure they will be regulated. Okay, my win of the week is going to be Huawei finding some relief with their chip business. So if you remember, about 2 weeks ago, Huawei actually lost access to their key manufacturing partner, TSMC, which meant that their whole chip business was in trouble. This week we learned that apparently they're cozying up with Mediatek and will be using Mediatek chips in their phones and networking equipment going forward. Mediatek stock is through the roof this week, based at least partially on rumors and kind of confirmations that Huawei would indeed switch from its own Kirin chips over to Mediatek chips, at least until it figures out how to manufacture chips well enough without TSMC, and I think that's kind of exciting. Mediatek has some good mobile chips, but they've always been kind of a distant second behind Qualcomm in the Android world. However, I think if Huawei is serious about this and they co-invest and they give them a lot of orders, they might actually improve to the point where they could become a serious competitor to Qualcomm, maybe even on the top end. And that alone is quite exciting. And fun fact, Mediatek chips are manufactured by TSMC, which means that it is exactly how I predicted in last week's Friday Checkout. Basically, even if TSMC loses direct access to Huawei, they're not going to lose their business because they're just so good they can't really be replaced. They just get around to them indirectly. I also don't fully understand why Mediatek gets to supply chips to Huawei while TSMC doesn't, especially since they're both Taiwanese. But I guess the best explanation I found so far is that Mediatek doesn't manufacture chips, so they don't actually use a lot of US equipment, unlike TSMC, so it's a little harder to exert pressure on them. But then that seems like a short-term loophole that the US could plug if they wanted anyway. But anyway, I hope this works out. I hope we get a second competitor, and good luck to Mediatek. I'm sure that on the long run, Huawei is still working on getting to full independence, so basically being able to manufacture chips as well as TSMC, except inside China. After all, this Mediatek deal might still be snatched from them, but until then, these new chips from Mediatek should give them some breathing room, and it might actually end up giving us a proper second competitor to Qualcomm. And my fail of the week is going to be more of a rant than anything, but it's the new Note 20. It's as if Samsung set out to basically embarrass themselves. And I say this as somebody who's been using, owning, and loving the Note 10 basically since it came out. So if you have somehow managed to miss this, Samsung had their big hardware unpacked event a couple of days ago, and I think overall they did a really fantastic job this year. I mean, the Fold looks incredible, the Buds Live are getting really good reviews, the watch looks decent, they announced better Your Phone integration, 3 generations of software updates for their flagships dating all the way back to the Galaxy S10, so many good things, and then the Note 20. It is a $1,000 phone that comes with a plastic back and a 60Hz Full HD screen. That is a significant downgrade even from the baseline Galaxy S20 that came out half a year ago, and it cost the same amount of money. Add to that in some markets it will not even launch with 5G by default, and that it will use the Exynos 990, which is now like a generation and a half behind Qualcomm, and I don't understand what Samsung is doing. Like, I'm all for Samsung launching a more budget-oriented Note if that's what they were going for, but then this phone should have been called the Note 20e and it should have cost $750, not $1,000. With this price, just forget about it. Alright, as for Crowd, my product review app, this week we've added about 500 new products to the app so you can review them, and we also of course have a brand new tech knowledge quiz with a lot of questions about this week's Galaxy announcement, Pixel devices, all that kind of stuff. We've also hidden a lot of Easter eggs, so see if you can find them all. As always, if you get at least 15 out of 20 questions right, you can choose to get an invite to Crowd and start reviewing the gadgets that you own. But either way, you're all invited to join our Crowd Discord, where we just hang out and chat about tech. Alright, that's it for this week's Friday checkout. If you have any suggestion for next week's episode, then tweet them at me at TechAltar, and I'll see you next Friday.